In the early Middle Ages, the Kingdom of Mercia stood as the most powerful force in England. Under kings like Penda, Æthelbald, and Offa, Mercia dominated neighboring kingdoms, including Wessex. They controlled trade routes, amassed wealth, and commanded alliances. Their rule stretched over what is now the Midlands, giving them control over both land and influence. But no kingdom can stay on top forever. The turning point came at the Battle of Elendune. Mercia, under King Beornwulf, faced the forces of Wessex led by King Egbert. The battle ended with a decisive Wessex victory, breaking Mercia's grip over southern England. Although Mercia remained independent, its supremacy was gone. The kingdoms of Wessex and Mercia began to move toward an alliance, one forged not by desire but by necessity. By the mid-9th century, a new threat loomed over the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, the Vikings. These Norse invaders wreaked havoc on England's coasts and towns. Mercia and Wessex found themselves in desperate need of unity to survive the onslaught. The alliance between Wessex and Mercia became official when King Alfred of Wessex married his daughter, Æthelflæd, to Æthelred, the ruler of Mercia. This marriage would prove critical in the coming fight against the Viking threat. Alfred the Great fought the Vikings fiercely and managed to secure a fragile peace. His reforms, including the establishment of fortified towns known as burhs, laid the foundation for England's future resilience. But Alfred's success was only part of the story. It was Æthelflæd, his daughter, who stepped into a leadership role, ready to protect Mercia and continue the fight against the Vikings. By the mid-9th century, Viking invaders swept across the land, conquering territories and plundering wealth. In 878, they launched a surprise attack on Chippenham, forcing Alfred of Wessex to flee into exile. Alfred, now a fugitive in his own kingdom, hid in the marshes of Somerset. He returned from exile, leading a force against the Viking army at the Battle of Edington. The battle ended with a decisive victory for Wessex. Nothing is known of Æthelflæd's youth, and she only enters the pages of history at the age of 15 when she was married to Æthelred. She was born to Alfred and Elswith, a noblewoman from Mercia, giving her deep roots in both kingdoms. To solidify the alliance between Wessex and Mercia, Alfred arranged the marriage of his eldest daughter Æthelflæd to Æthelred, the ruler of Mercia. Æthelred was at least 10 years older than Æthelflæd, and their marriage was likely arranged early in her life. After Alfred's victory at Edington, Æthelred accepted Alfred's overlordship, cementing the bond between Wessex and Mercia. From a city of Gloucester, Æthelred and Æthelflæd began their rule, governing Mercia close to the borders of Wessex and near Æthelflæd's family estates. The couple had one daughter, Ælfwine, whose name appears on a land charter in 903 AD. Although Ælfwine's birth date is unknown, she was likely born soon after their marriage. King Alfred the Great, the unifying force of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, passed away in 899 AD. His son Edward succeeded him, inheriting a kingdom constantly under Viking threat. To strengthen ties with Mercia, Edward sent his own son, Æthelstan, to be raised at Mercia. Under the guardianship of Æthelred and Æthelflæd, Æthelstan grew up alongside their daughter. Æthelstan was educated at the Mercian court, where he learned statecraft and military skills. This upbringing was crucial in shaping him into the future king who would eventually unite England. The king and queen of Mercia were devoted patrons of the church. Both freely endowed monasteries, churches, and priories across Mercia, cementing their influence and ensuring spiritual support for their reign. One of their boldest acts of devotion was a daring raid into Viking territory to recover the bones of St. Oswald, the revered king of Northumbria. Oswald, a pious king and founder of the Priory of Lindisfarne, had been slain in battle decades earlier, and his relics were scattered across the land. Æthelred and Æthelflæd triumphantly brought St. Oswald's remains back to Mercia and built a priory in Gloucester to house the saint's bones. Despite the peace Alfred had won, Viking raiders continued to threaten both Mercia and Wessex. In 902, Æthelred's health was declined, and the burden of leadership increasingly fell to Æthelflæd. Æthelflæd gradually took over the responsibilities of governing Mercia, leading military campaigns, and reinforcing Alfred's system of burhs, fortified towns that acted as defenses against Viking attacks. In 907 AD, A Norwegian Viking leader named Ingemund and his followers, recently expelled from Dublin by an Irish uprising, sought refuge in Mercia. In an effort to stabilize the region, Æthelflæd granted Ingemund and his people lands near Chester. However, once the Vikings had settled, they cast envious eyes on the more fertile areas surrounding the city. Restless and dissatisfied with what they had been given, the Vikings launched 2 unsuccessful assaults on Chester. News of these attacks quickly reached Æthelflæd, who wasted no time in riding north to take charge of the situation. She devised a clever plan. She would lure the Vikings into the city itself, where a hidden force awaited to ambush them. Æthelflæd knew that facing the Vikings in open battle could be risky. Instead, she ordered her forces to engage the Vikings just outside the city and then retreat within the walls, baiting the enemy to follow. Believing they had the Mercians on the run, the Viking warriors pursued them into the city. But as soon as they passed through the gates, Æthelflæd's hidden forces emerged, slamming the gates shut behind them. With the gates sealed, the Vikings were caught between the retreating defenders and Æthelflæd's hidden forces. The narrow streets of Chester became a killing ground, and the Viking raiders were swiftly cut down by the Mercian cavalry. Following the victory at Chester, Æthelflæd's reputation as a formidable leader only grew. The Vikings, recognizing the strength of Mercia under her command, hesitated to launch further attacks in the region for some time. In 911, after a decade of illness, Æthelred, Lord of Mercia, passed away. With his death, Æthelflæd assumed sole rule of Mercia, earning the title Lady of Mercia. Though no woman had ever ruled Mercia alone before, queenship had long been respected in the kingdom. Remarkably, there is no record of any opposition to her succession. She quickly turned to her brother Edward, King of Wessex, for support. Both siblings shared a vision, one inspired by their father Alfred the Great, a united England that could resist Viking incursions. Æthelflæd and Edward knew that the fragmented Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, divided by old rivalries, could not drive back the Vikings on their own. In a show of trust and unity, Æthelflæd transferred control of the key cities of Oxford and London to Edward's Kingdom of Wessex, ensuring their protection and reinforcing their alliance. With the alliance between Mercia and Wessex solidified, Æthelflæd launched a series of campaigns to reclaim Viking-held territories. She fortified towns along the River Severn, built new burhs, and gradually drove the Norse invaders from their strongholds. Æthelflæd's military acumen was unmatched. One by one, the Viking strongholds in the Midlands and the north began to fall under her control. Among her greatest achievements were the conquests of Derby and Leicester. These were major Viking settlements, and their capture marked a turning point in the struggle to reclaim England from the Norse invaders. Derby was the first of the 5 boroughs, key Viking towns in the Midlands, fall to Anglo-Saxon control. Leicester soon followed, falling to Æthelflæd's forces without a fight. By the late summer of 918, Æthelflæd's influence stretched all the way to the River Humber. Remarkably, she had even persuaded the powerful city of York, one of the last Viking strongholds in England, to pledge allegiance to her. Unfortunately, Æthelflæd would not live to see York officially submit. Just 2 weeks before her scheduled visit, Æthelflæd fell gravely ill and died in Tamworth. She was laid to rest beside her husband Æthelred in St. Oswald's Priory in Gloucester, a place they had built together as a testament to their faith and devotion to Mercia. Following Æthelflæd's death, her daughter Ælfwine was named the new Lady of Mercia, but Ælfwine's reign would be brief. Although she was her mother's chosen successor, Mercia's independence was already under threat from her uncle, Edward the Elder. Concerned that Mercia might resist his authority, Edward acted swiftly. By the end of 918, he deposed Ælfwine and dissolved Mercia into the Kingdom of Wessex, ending centuries of Mercian independence. With Mercia under Wessex's control, Edward the Elder moved one step closer to realizing the dream his father Alfred the Great had envisioned, a unified England. The consolidation of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms paved the way for his son, Æthelstan, to eventually become the first king of all England.